In March 2023, the house was too quiet. Cincinnati still felt like late winter, salt on the curb, a gray film on the Ohio River, and I sat at the dining table with a cooling cup of black tea. Richard had been gone for 3 weeks. I was sorting paperwork, pension forms, the hospice invoice, the small stack of sympathy cards I couldn't answer yet. His laptop was there because everything of his ended up there, taxes, photos, passwords he never wrote down. I opened it to find his insurance logins and instead found a folder called Drafts that didn't belong to me. The first line of the first letter used a nickname I hadn't heard since our son was in college. I didn't shout. I didn't call anyone. I read, counted to 50, and made a list. Sometimes loss arrives in layers. You bury a man, and then you bury the story he kept. The funeral was on a Friday. By Sunday, Elaine Mercer had ironed shirts she no longer needed to iron and stacked them in a donation bag. On Tuesday, she called the bank to remove Richard's name from a checking account that held more air than money. Routine kept the house from collapsing inward. She had been married for 34 years. She was 56 years old. She was the office manager for a dental clinic, a position she'd held for 19 years. She kept records. She knew how to read a calendar, a receipt, a pattern. By the second week of March, she decided to deal with the tax return because April doesn't wait for grief. Richard's MacBook still had his thumbprint in the settings. It opened as if he might walk in and ask for it back. She searched for TurboTax and, almost by muscle memory, clicked Mail instead. A sidebar listed folders she'd never used: Ideas, Drafts, Do Not Send. The one called Drafts had 50 messages. Same subject line. Same recipient. Sophie Lane. Her daughter-in-law's email address. The newest was dated 6 days before Richard died. Elaine remembered the creak of the dining chair and the sound of a neighbor's leaf blower. She remembered aligning the trackpad with 2 fingers, already steady. She opened the first draft. You won't read this, but I need to say it. The letters were not long. They were careful. Richard had written like a man who wanted to be understood but not discovered. They began with disclaimers and ended with variations of delete this if it ever lands. He never sent them. He dated each one and kept them lined up like a ledger. The content stayed on one side of a line he tried to draw for himself: admiration for Sophie's kindness with their grandson, gratitude for dinners she hosted when Elaine was traveling for work, worry that Daniel took her for granted. But there were sentences that belonged nowhere a father-in-law should go. Sentences about the way you look up when you laugh. And I will never say this aloud. He was precise about moments: Tuesday grocery runs, a chipped mug she liked at their house, the sound of her voice on speakerphone when Daniel called from the car. Elaine counted 50 drafts. She noted the subject lines, the recipient field, the timestamps. She opened a new folder on the desktop and labeled it Taxes 2022. Inside it, she nested another folder, Archive. She selected all 50 messages and chose Export Mailbox. The file was saved. She checked the size. 32 megabytes. Then she printed 3. The earliest. One from the middle. The last. The rest she photographed on her phone, one screen at a time, scrolling slowly to ensure nothing was cut off. She placed the 3 printed pages in a manila envelope and wrote the date on the front in pencil. Then she returned the laptop to sleep and set it back on the corner of the table where it had been. The house was still quiet. She poured the cold tea into the sink and washed the cup. On a legal pad, she wrote a single line at the top: find the first sign I ignored. When you look backward, the seams show. It wasn't sudden. It was made of polite detours. 2 summers ago, Richard began offering to help Daniel with the shed most Saturdays. The shed never looked any different. He became attentive to birthdays he'd previously forgotten, especially Sophie's, an elaborate cake from a bakery in Hyde Park, a bracelet that didn't fit the way gifts from in-laws usually don't. He started wearing cologne on Sunday afternoons. He took up walking after dinner and returned with a calm he hadn't brought to their table in years. At Christmas, Richard insisted on upgrading their family photo for the mantle and placed himself between Elaine and Sophie, a hand hovering in a way that didn't register then. It wasn't lust that startled her, looking back. It was the intimacy of tone, the way he spoke to Sophie with a deference he never showed Elaine, or even their son. She filed each memory, a neat little stack, once she knew where to put them. By mid-March, Elaine had pulled a shoebox of old receipts from the hall closet. She sorted them by date and category. A bakery receipt from Hyde Park appeared 3 times in 2 years, always in early spring. Sophie's birthday was in April. She opened the tablet and scrolled through photos from the previous December. The family portrait Richard had arranged. He stood between her and Sophie. His hand rested near Sophie's elbow, fingers splayed as if steadying something fragile. On Richard's keyring, which still sat in a bowl by the door, she found a loyalty card for a coffee shop near Daniel and Sophie's neighborhood. The stamp card showed 14 visits. She checked the address. It was 20 minutes from their house, in the opposite direction from anywhere Richard usually went. She pulled up the calendar app on Richard's laptop. Synced across devices. Dinner walks noted in 15-minute blocks, twice a week for the past 8 months. She added a column to her legal pad, behavioral notes. Next to each draft date, she matched a calendar entry or a receipt. Tuesday, June 14th, draft saved at 9:47 p.m. Calendar showed walk from 7 to 7:15. Saturday, August 6th, draft saved at 11:02 p.m. Receipt from Hyde Park Bakery, same day. The pattern sharpened. She wrote on the pad's last line that night, export, backup, verify metadata. On a Thursday morning in late March, Elaine sat at the dining table with the laptop, a portable hard drive, and her phone face down beside a cooling mug of coffee. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floor settling. She opened Mail again and navigated to File, then Export Mailbox. This time she selected the entire account structure and saved it to the external drive. The progress bar filled slowly. When it finished, she verified the file size and the last modified timestamps. Then she opened System Preferences and accessed iCloud settings. She initiated a full backup download, mail, calendars, notes, photos. The download took 43 minutes. While it ran, she opened Safari and reviewed the browsing history. She filtered by date, starting 6 months before Richard's death. 3 search phrases appeared multiple times. Letters I shouldn't send. How to stop thinking about someone. Is it wrong to care about someone you can't have? There was also a purchase confirmation from an online stationery store. Cream-colored cardstock, heavyweight, 50 sheets. The order had shipped to their address. She'd never seen it. She noted each search phrase on her legal pad, along with the date and time. Then she returned to the drafts folder and selected 3 messages as examples. The earliest, dated 2 years ago. One from the midpoint, a year later. The most recent, 6 days before he died. She read them again, slowly, this time noting recurring phrases. I admire your patience. This is unsendable. You deserve more attention than Daniel gives you. The way you looked up when you laughed, I can't stop replaying it. Each letter was signed R, never Richard, or Dad. She created a simple index in a new document, date, time, key reference, location guess. Draft 12, Tuesday groceries, reference to a conversation about organic produce. Location, probably the Kroger near Daniel's house. Draft 27, chipped mug, reference to a blue ceramic mug Sophie liked at their house. Location, their kitchen. Draft 41, Sunday roast, reference to a dinner Sophie hosted when Elaine was traveling for a conference. Location, Daniel and Sophie's dining room. She saved the index, backed it up to the external drive, and ejected the drive carefully. Then she slid the manila envelope into her tote bag and wrote a question on a sticky note. Protect without punishing Daniel, how? She placed the sticky note inside the envelope. On her phone, she opened her contacts and scrolled to K, Marjorie Kell, estate and family planning attorney. They'd met through the clinic. Marjorie handled guardianship forms for elderly patients. Elaine sent a text, available for a consultation this week? Personal matter. The response came 12 minutes later. Wednesday 10:30 work. Elaine replied, yes. She set her phone face down again and looked around the dining room. Everything was in its place. The laptop, the legal pad, the envelope in her bag. Proof is a form of mercy. It prevents embellishment. Marjorie Kell's office was on the third floor of a modest building near the courthouse. The walls were lined with binders labeled by year and category. A small window overlooked a parking lot. Elaine arrived on Wednesday at 10:28. She carried her tote bag and wore a navy cardigan over a plain blouse. Marjorie was 48, composed, with short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "What can I help you with?" Elaine set the manila envelope on the desk, but didn't open it yet. "I need to make changes to protect myself and my grandson without creating a spectacle." Marjorie nodded once. "Let's start with assets." They listed everything. The house, jointly owned but with Elaine as primary on the deed. Retirement accounts, some joint, some individual. Life insurance policies. A small investment portfolio. The car. Savings. "What are you protecting against?" Marjorie asked. "Future claims. Complications. Misunderstandings." Marjorie didn't press for details. "We can structure it so distributions require controls. A trust, for example. You as grantor, an independent trustee as co-signer. That way nothing passes without two signatures." "What about the house?" "Transfer on death deed. Keep it out of probate. You designate a beneficiary. Can be revoked or changed anytime. Heirlooms. Non-probate property. List them in a separate directive. Store them accordingly. Safe deposit box under the trust's name." Elaine opened the envelope and placed the 3 printed drafts on the desk. Marjorie read them without expression. When she finished, she looked up. "I see. I want my son protected," Elaine said. "I don't want him in the middle. We'll use categories, not names. That excludes individuals by relationship type, not identity. Clean and defensible." They worked for 90 minutes. By the end, Marjorie had outlined a plan, revised the will, change beneficiary designations, draft a simple trust with restricted distributions, file a transfer on death deed, and prepare an inventory of heirlooms. "This will take about 3 weeks to finalize," Marjorie said. "We'll need notarization and funding meetings." "That's fine." Marjorie handed her a 1-page checklist. "Start gathering account numbers and titles. We'll set up the first signing for mid-April." Elaine folded the checklist and placed it in the envelope with the drafts. "Thank you." "You're welcome." On the way out, Elaine stopped at the parking lot and sat in her car for 5 minutes, hands on the wheel, breathing steadily. Then she drove home. Meanwhile, she observed. On the first Sunday in April, Daniel and Sophie came for dinner. Elaine had made a simple roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Their grandson, Owen, age 7, colored at the kitchen table while the adults sat in the living room. Sophie avoided Elaine's eyes. When spoken to, she answered in short, polite sentences. "Thank you for dinner." "That's fine. We should go soon." Daniel over-explained normal things. Traffic was light. "We left early." Owen wanted to bring his new markers. At one point, Owen walked over with a drawing. It showed a stick figure at a table with a rectangle in front of it. "That's Granddad's laptop," he said. Elaine looked at the drawing and nodded. "Very good." She put it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like an apple. After they left, she texted Marjorie, "Schedule a second appointment." By late April, Elaine had completed the checklist. Account numbers, beneficiary forms, property titles, heirloom inventory. Everything was organized in a 3-ring binder with color-coded tabs. At the second meeting, she and Marjorie reviewed each document. They signed drafts. Marjorie's assistant notarized them. The trust was named the Mercer Family Trust. The purpose: provide for Owen's education and welfare. The structure: Elaine as grantor, an independent accountant named Leonard Hobbs as co-trustee. All distributions required 2 signatures. No exceptions. "Leonard's good," Marjorie said. "He doesn't get involved in family disputes. He follows the terms." "That's what I want." They revised the beneficiary designations on Elaine's retirement accounts. Previously, to spouse, then to son, now, to Mercer Family Trust for the benefit of Owen Mercer. They drafted a transfer on death deed for the house. Beneficiary, the trust. They prepared a will that excluded in-laws by category. No distributions shall pass to any person related by marriage unless otherwise specified. Heirlooms, a locket, 2 rings, a set of silver flatware, were inventoried and scheduled for transfer to a safe deposit box opened under the trust's name. By the end of April, the documents were finalized and filed. Elaine kept copies in the binder. Marjorie kept the originals in her office vault. "You're set," Marjorie said. Elaine nodded. "Thank you." On a calm evening in early May, Elaine sat at her kitchen counter and assembled a slim package. Inside, 3 printed drafts. The earliest, the midpoint, the latest. Each one dated in Richard's hand, each one addressed to Sophie. No highlighting, no annotations, just the letters. At the bottom, on a plain index card in her own handwriting, Elaine wrote a single line. "I am closing what he left open." She placed everything in a 9x12 envelope. On the front, she wrote Sophie's full name and the address of the community health clinic where Sophie worked as a scheduler. Return address, her own, plainly written. She sealed the envelope and walked to the post office the next morning. At the counter, she requested certified mail with a return receipt. The clerk stamped the form and handed her a tracking number on a small slip of paper. "Signature required on delivery," the clerk said. "Yes." Elaine kept the receipt and placed it in the binder under a tab labeled Correspondence. The tracking was updated 2 days later, delivered at 8:43 a.m. signed by S. Lane. Elaine saved the confirmation and moved the small but sentimental items, her mother's locket, the ring she wore in their wedding photo, a bracelet her grandmother had given her, into the safe deposit box. The bank officer handed her 2 keys. "Both are required for access," he said. "Understood." She placed one key in her wallet and the other in a labeled envelope inside the binder. Then she went home, turned off her phone's ringer, and placed it face down on the counter. She waited. Sophie called once. The number flashed on the screen at 7:12 a.m. on a Thursday, the hour of school lunches and traffic reports. Elaine let it go to voicemail. Later, she played the message. Sophie's voice was steady, not crying. "Elaine, can we talk?" 5 words. No explanation. No denial. Elaine saved the message and deleted the notification. That afternoon, she texted Daniel, "I'd like some time before Sunday dinners resume. I'll drop off the lasagna." He replied 12 minutes later, "Okay. I understand." They didn't speak about the letters. They didn't need to. The following week, Daniel stopped by with Owen and a bag of groceries. He fixed the loose hinge on the pantry door without comment. He put the milk in the fridge. He opened a can of soda and drank it standing at the counter while Owen built a small city out of magnets on the floor. When he left, he touched Elaine's shoulder. "Mom, thanks for everything." She nodded. At the lawyer's office in late May, Elaine signed the final trust papers. Marjorie witnessed. Leonard Hobbs, the independent trustee, signed beside her. The trust was funded. The house deed was filed. The bank accounts were updated. "You'll receive annual statements," Leonard said. "Call if you need distributions." "Thank you." 2 weeks later, the safe deposit box keys clicked like punctuation in Elaine's hand as she opened the vault at the bank for the final transfer. The teller smiled without knowing what she had witnessed. In June, Elaine sold the second car she didn't need and paid off the remainder of the home equity line. She received the title in the mail and filed it under completed. She planted tomatoes in the backyard. 6 plants in a row along the fence. She watered them every morning, a new habit in an old space. Control is not a loud thing. It's a calendar without dread. By autumn, Elaine had everything she needed. The documents were where they belonged. The photos she kept of Richard were the ones that didn't hurt to look at: early years, family trips, Owen as a baby. The rest were boxed and stored in the basement. The letters lived in a sealed envelope inside the binder. A directive stapled to the front read, "To be destroyed upon grantor's death. Not to be opened." She didn't tell Daniel. She didn't need his memory of his father to match hers. Memory is private property. She let him keep his. If Sophie changed how she moved through the house, that was her decision. If Daniel learned anything, Elaine hoped it was about paying attention to the quiet ways people break. On the first Sunday of October, Owen came over in the afternoon. They walked to the backyard to harvest the last tomatoes. The plants were tired but still producing. They picked 12 tomatoes, green to red, and lined them on the windowsill in the kitchen. "They know what to do," Owen said, serious in the way 7-year-olds are. "They do," Elaine said. They ate dinner early. Grilled cheese and soup. Owen told her about soccer practice and a book he was reading about astronauts. After he left, the light fell through the kitchen like water. Soft and cool. The kind of light that makes you notice how clean a room can be. Elaine washed the teacup she'd used for chamomile. She dried it with a cotton towel and set it upside down on the rack. Outside, the streetlights came on, one by one, making soft circles on the sidewalk. She turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the tomatoes on the sill. Green to red. Waiting. Then she went upstairs, closed the bedroom door quietly, and slept without dreaming. Every story here will stir your soul. Welcome to Spice and Sugar, your daily escape into real emotions, bold lives, and unforgettable lessons. Here, it's all about love, loss, laughter, and the quiet strength that carries us through. I share stories that make you feel, that remind you you're not alone, that every bitter moment can lead to something sweet. If you want to laugh, cry, and see life through stories that heal and inspire, subscribe and stay a while.